In this video, we're going to look at everything you need to know about the topic of energy for your GCSE Physics Paper 1, and we're going to do it in less than 15 minutes. So let's get started. So you can see the 6 main energy sources I've listed here. Anything that's got thermal energy could be anything that's hot, anything above absolute zero, for example, an oven, but lots of examples really. Chemical energy you'd find in batteries, food and fuel. Kinetic energy is in anything that moves, so a car or a person running. Gravitational potential energy is anything that's got a height above the surface of the Earth. So for example, a ball being thrown. Elastic potential energy would be contained in elastic bands and springs, and nuclear energy, the only real example of that for GCSE is in uranium fuel in nuclear power stations. The conservation of energy, or law of conservation of energy, states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred from one form or one store into another. So for example, on these energy stores, if one goes down a bit, another goes up a bit. Now, really importantly here is this only applies in what's called a closed system. A system is an object or a group of objects, so if it's closed, it means there's no energy can come in or out. Now, some of these energy stores are lucky enough to have their own equation. So we've got an equation for kinetic energy, for elastic potential energy, and for gravitational potential energy. So obviously you do not need to memorize the equations anymore, but you do need to know the units and how to use them. So the units for kinetic energy are joules. Mass is always measured in kilograms, not grams. Speed or velocity, that's why it's a V, is measured in meters per second. For gravitational potential energy, it's joules again. Gravitational field strength is measured in newtons per kilogram. That is almost always in your questions going to be 9.8 if you're on planet Earth. And change in height has to be in meters, not centimeters or kilometers. Elastic potential energy, we've got something called a spring constant, which comes up more in paper 2 when you look at springs in more detail, but it's measured in newtons per meter. And extension, how much something extends by or compresses by, is measured in meters. Now, I mentioned that you don't need to memorize the equations, you do need to know how to use them. So I'd strongly recommend using something like a method called FIFA. FIFA stands for formula, insert your values, fine tune, and then give your answer. The idea is not to use formula triangles, not to guess whether to divide or times, but by doing this step. And you always get the first mark, even if you go wrong later on. So I've got an example here. It says find the height dropped if a half kilogram ball loses 50 joules of energy, gravitational potential energy here, and G is 9.8 newtons per kilogram. So what we do is we write out our formula. Hopefully it's obvious which one we're going to talk about. We're talking about gravitational potential energy, so M times G times change in height. Insert my values. I've got underneath the energy, I've now got 50 joules. Underneath the mass, I've got 0.5, G is 9.8, and the change in height I don't know, so I'm going to leave that as an X, or you could leave it as a H or a question mark, whatever. You just don't know what it is. Next, the fine-tuning stage. We need to make sure we are making life simpler for ourselves. So therefore, 0.5 times by 9.8 is 4.9. Just makes the equation look a bit easier. And hopefully we can figure out from there to get rid of the times by 4.9 to find x. I divide 50 by 4.9, which in this case gives us an answer of a height or change in height of 10.2 meters. Our second example is a little bit trickier. This is an example of a multi-step equation, which I'll link a whole video I've done on these type of questions in the video at the top right. So this question says a roller coaster car is at a height of 150 meters, has a mass of 2,000 kilograms. What can its maximum speed be at the end? Now at the top, the roller coaster is going to have a velocity of 0, so it's stationary. It's going to have a lot of gravitational potential energy. But to work out its speed, we need to make a little assumption here, which is that all of its potential energy gets converted into kinetic energy. Obviously that wouldn't happen in real life, there'd be energy lost. We'll talk about that a bit later. So if we work out its gravitational potential energy first, so that's 2,000 times by 9.8 times by 150 gives us 2,940,000 joules. We can then say, well, if that's all get converted to kinetic energy, therefore in the kinetic energy equation, there's that number equals a half times by 2,000 kilograms times by the speed squared. So to get the speed squared by itself, I can do a half times by 2,000, easy peasy, that's 1,000, and divide 2,940,000 by 1,000, and then to get rid of the v squared, to make it v, I've got to do a square root at the end, which gives me 54.2 meters per second, which is pretty fast, but it is a roller coaster, so not too unreasonable. Now, some of you might notice you could actually cancel the m's in both equations because a mass is in both equations. However, stage by stage at GCSE, just make sure your marks, I would include it in your workings. An object or system is said to be doing work if it is transferring energy. So example, our roller coaster earlier was transferring energy to thermal energy store due to friction. You could also say it's doing work overcoming friction. It means the same thing. There is a separate equation for work done, which is work done equals force times by distance. Work done is in joules, also giving us a hint that it's the same thing as energy. Force is measured in newtons and distance is measured in meters. Power is the rate at which energy is transferred, or again, the rate at which work is done. It's got two different equations which are equivalent to each other. It's either energy divided by time or work done divided by time. Either way, power is measured in watts and time has to be in seconds. Efficiency is a measure of how usefully energy is transferred. The higher the number, the more usefully energy is transferred. To calculate it, you need to know the useful energy output divided by the total energy input. And you can either leave it as a decimal or times by 100 to make it as a percentage. Now, instead of energy, you could also put power into this equation. It doesn't really matter. There are two equations on your equation sheet. Just keep an eye on what you're given in a question. To improve the efficiency of a machine or a system, you can do a number of things. You can either lubricate moving parts, which reduces friction, just like car engine oil. You can try and insulate it as much as possible to reduce heat being transferred out, or you could try and streamline the shape, which might reduce drag. Overall, most energy is lost due to thermal energy. A good phrase to learn is it dissipates into the surroundings. As this happens, it gets less and less useful the more it is transferred. Let's talk about another one of these energy stores. Let's talk about thermal energy. So thermal or heat energy always travels from hot to cold. So a mug of tea will radiate heat outwards, and ice cream will have heat inwards, so it can melt. Sounds like a really obvious point, but often students get this mixed up. In a fridge, for example, your food is hotter than the fridge, so the heat transfers from your food into the fridge and then through the back of the fridge to the surroundings. The rate of thermal energy transfer depends on three things. This thing called thermal conductivity, the thickness of the material, and the temperature difference. So temperature difference, I think, is one of the easier ones. If you've got a house on a cold day and it's 20 degrees inside, there's going to be a greater rate of heat transfer than if the outside temperature was more similar to the temperature inside the house. So a greater temperature difference means a greater rate of heat transfer. For a thicker material, that means you have a lower rate of heat transfer because there are more particles for the heat to get through via conduction, where the particles are vibrating and passing on their vibrations. The trickier one is thermal conductivity. The clue is in the name a little bit, is to do with conduction. Let's say I've got these three materials here when I'm looking at their different thermal conductivities. So as we can see, the highest number is sand, the lowest number is cotton wool. What that tells us is that the best insulator is cotton wool because it has the lowest thermal conductivity, which means it has the lowest rate of heat energy transferred. The worst insulator, or the best conductor, would be sand, as it has the highest rate of heat transferred. The last thing for this topic is specific heat capacity. This is defined as the energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of a substance by 1 degree. It's got an equation on your equation sheet. Energy is in joules, mass is in kilograms. This funny symbol at the end is delta, and we use the theta for AQA for temperature change, which is in degrees Celsius. The units for specific heat capacity are quite tricky, but you can use the equation to help you. They are in joules per kilogram degrees Celsius. So if you rearrange the equation, you can find that out yourself if you remember the units of the other three things. What this means is that a higher specific heat capacity means a substance can store more energy for less temperature increase. If it's not increasing much in temperature, even though you're putting the same energy in as something else, it means it's got a higher specific heat capacity. There is a required practical to do with this as well as the insulation topic. Again, I'll just link at the top of the video so you can see in detail how to do that. Let's talk next about energy sources. So not energy stores, but energy sources. Where do we get sources for energy to provide our houses with electricity? So there are two main categories. We've got non-renewable sources, which will eventually run out. They are made up of the three fossil fuels: coal, oil, and natural gas, and also nuclear, which is not termed a fossil fuel, but it is non-renewable because there is a limited amount of things like uranium and plutonium to provide nuclear fuel. So the main benefits of fossil fuels, they are very reliable. They will produce a continual output of electricity from the power stations, and also the technology for the power stations already exists. It's already in use all across the world. That is a plus point. The downside is that they produce greenhouse gases, mainly CO2, carbon dioxide, which will increase global warming. Nuclear energy does not produce carbon dioxide. Its main pro point is that it is going to produce more energy per kilogram. Not more energy, but compared to 1 kilogram of coal, it produces about 1,000,000 times more energy. It does, however, produce radioactive waste and is therefore very expensive to decommission to get rid of all that waste. The same arguments apply with fossil fuels with cars and houses. Using less is much better for things like transport and how we heat our houses. Now, renewable energy sources won't run out. They're made up of these 7 different types of renewable energy source you see here: solar, wind, wave, biofuel, geothermal, hydroelectric, and tidal. Now, the main benefits of these are the opposite of non-renewable sources. They do not produce greenhouse gases, apart from biofuel, but that's still carbon neutral, and they do not contribute towards global warming. The downsides are they're not as reliable generally, especially these 3 on the left. So solar, wind, and wave power all rely on the weather. It's not always sunny, it's not always windy, and therefore there's not going to be as many waves as well. So biofuel is anything that involves organic matter. So plant oil, cow dung, wood chips, all that stuff can be burnt to make electricity from farms. And the downside to that is that it emits carbon dioxide. In geothermal power plants, that uses heat from the ground, and that's only available in some locations where there is lots of volcanic activity. Hydroelectric electricity is a downside of that is that floods. There are lots of habitats destroyed when you build these giant hydroelectric dams. As a quick reminder, you've got hydroelectricity is from a reservoir of water up high going downstream. We can harness the kinetic energy that produces when it turns a turbine. Tidal power has the same issue, but is different to wave power. People often get confused. It does not rely on the waves, it relies on the tides, which are quite reliable twice a day. All these energy sources can be used to provide electricity in the UK via the national grid. The national grid is a network of cables and transformers linking power stations to consumers. So in this diagram here, we've got the power station on the left, we've got the consumer on the right. Now, after the electricity is produced at a relatively high voltage by the power station, it is increased to a really high voltage, often hundreds of thousands of volts, by something called a step-up transformer. So the reason it does this, it increases the potential difference or the voltage because it is trying to decrease the current. When it decreases the current, you actually reduce the heat loss to the surroundings and therefore improve the efficiency of the whole system and generally then save people money. The step-down transformer reduces potential difference to 230 volts, so it is safe for domestic use. That is the phrase to learn. Do not say it'll blow up or it'll shock people. It is just safe to use in homes. Now, all these things are used to meet what's known as the electricity demand. That's how much energy people require and how much electricity they require. Now, this varies with time of the day. It is we use the most electricity in the evenings when people are cooking food, turning lights on, coming home from work, and time of the year depends as well. So if it's a cold time of the year, we're going to use more electricity, generally speaking, because people are staying in their homes as opposed to going outside. So there's a topic of energy. Hope that's useful. Make sure you're revising actively, like make flashcards or make a little quiz about this content, and then try and practice with past paper questions from somewhere like Physics and Maths Tutor. I hope you found that useful. Please leave a like. There'll be more coming soon in the near future.